really cool when they work.
Yeah, it was late 60s. My dad had a Cadillac something that he was test driving, and it had a radio like that in it. It was a 58 Cadillac town car or something like that.
Yeah, this one's out of a 58 Eldorado, I think is what the guy told me. He's lives in Illinois.
Yeah.
And the other one he gave me is over here in pieces, and it's from a guy in Michigan, I think.
Yeah, I think after a few times of pushing the button, we weren't allowed to push the buttons anymore.
They're actually pretty cool, but the circuit's fairly critical. You got to have it just right, or it won't work.
Yeah, well, at the time I saw it, I probably didn't really appreciate what it was I was looking at.
No, the button was pretty though, wasn't it?
I remember my grandfather had a, I don't know what year Imperial it was. It had the Imperial that had the you know, the space age fins with the lights, you know, on the end.
Oh, cool.
And it had a power antenna, and that was so cool, just to raise and lower the antenna.
Those were cool too. Turn the radio on and the antenna slides up or drives up.
Yeah. I don't know if it did that or not, but I mean, I remember it had an up and down switch for it. So.
And my roommate in college had a 57 Chrysler 300, and it had this little Cyclops thing that sat up on the top of the dash.
Yeah.
That sensed headlights coming on, and if you had your brights on, it would automatically dim them. Mm-hmm. It had that, it had reverb springs, and sat 21 people comfortably, I think. Oh,
yeah.
God, that was a big car. Had a big Hemi engine in it, and you could step on the gas, and oh, that big car would move, but you could watch the gas gauge go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't think you were going fast until you look down. You just accelerate real slowly forever.
That car was so comfortable. You didn't really feel it. You didn't feel it. You just kind of, it's like sitting in your living room. I had a 72 Mazda pickup. That was absolutely the other end of the scale.
Yeah, right. What do you work? You probably already mentioned it, but what were you working on there, Blake?
Oh, I'm working on a real nasty little radio here. It's a tilt it down so you can see it. It's a little Emerson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's an R156.
Yeah.
And belongs to Gary Marvin. And anyway, it's been a nightmare. Somebody had gotten into it, and I'm thinking it may be a World War II save, because it had two tubes in it had been changed along with their sockets.
Mm-hmm.
And they took a 75 out of it and put a 6B7. They took a 6A7 out of it and put in a 6A8. Anyway, the radio did not play well, and I made the decision to put it all back the way it was. Yeah. And anyway, it plays very nicely now, but I've got probably 4 hours and a zillion parts in it.
Yeah.
Last thing that Gary wanted was wants an MP3 jack on it, so I'm putting an MP3 jack in it. It's transformer set though, so you know it's fairly early for Emerson.
Yeah, right, because they always did all the AC/DC ones, didn't they?
Yep. All right.
Oh, I've been resurrecting a little bit more modern radio. Ham rig that was given me, and one thing that it's ICOM, and one thing they did that's really terrible on the things, and they did it in a whole series of them. They have a compact fluorescent lamp for backlighting the displays.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you got a high voltage inverter inside a 12-volt radio to run the stupid backlighting, and then the power supplies, I guess, go bad on them. And for a while, there were some hams actually made some LCD replacements, or I mean LED replacements for backlighting on those, and also on some Yaesu radios. But it looks like both of those guys aren't making them anymore. So I made my own kind of slipped the LED inside behind the LCD on the end of it, where that's got kind of a plastic light pipe thing. And
Yeah. A light pipe.
yeah, kind of. I mean, this kind of a I don't know if light pipe's the right word.
Light from the edge, don't they?
Yeah, light from the edge, right? And anyway, I was able to get it working really good, and getting rid of the high voltage supply, it dropped the current consumption probably about almost an amp.
Oh, cool.
So what kind of high voltage did it need for the?
I'm going to just guess a couple hundred volts. I really didn't know and didn't really care. I just yarded out the little. It's okay.
That's for Nixie tubes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a little kit.
Yeah.
Uses 12 volts.
But like I said, this is a 12-volt radio, and why do you want to have an inverter in a HF radio? I used to have a Yaesu radio. It also had a CFL backlight, it turns out. And if you disconnected the antenna, you could hear the little birdies inside the HF bands from the inverter. And it's kind of like, you know, you're creating a problem you don't need.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like the old Heathkit 12-volt inverter power supply. Get your tube high voltage out of that.
Yeah, but they didn't have real good LEDs. But still, I think they still could have figured it out instead of using those compact fluorescent lamps. And they were doing that up to fairly recently, just a few years ago. And
what model of ICOM was that?
Well, that's the 746. The 756 and the Pro series up to the Pro 3s, I'll use those, and that's not that old of a radio. And maybe even the 7600 did too. And looks like you must have nice weather there.
Yeah. It's going to be, I think it's going to be in the 80s tomorrow. Okay. And really, really nice. We've had rain up until today. Today was a nice day. I don't know how warm it got today, but we had showers. And then it's going to be nice starting today through the weekend, I think. I don't know.
And then Monday, it's supposed to be 95 to 100.
Oh boy.
We don't do that here.
Like, you're gonna have to take your mechanical toy out, that red thing behind it.
Oh yeah, we had that out earlier today, running like a champ.
We gotta.
I have a question for you. So I'm reading what's the difference between a 1N400X and a 1N4148?
Dave, your audio is really distorted.
Is that better?
No.
No.
Your safety. Protecting your skin from heat.
Okay, let me see if I figure this out.
Okay.
Your own and more. Thank you. Happy tastes good.
All right.
Being
That sounds-
self-explanatory, does it not?
All right, that one's all done.
I see Joe in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe's here.
Your radio sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Good.
Let's see what I put into it and what I took out of it. Might as well just, had a chassis and call it a heat kit. Oh, well, it's done. That's all that matters. Now I can move on to the Atwater Kent 55.
Let's set it on fire.
No, we don't do that here. That's Joe's radio shop.
I can watch it burn.
And then he brings them over here.
This thing's all burned up.
What are we burning or smoking?
Did somebody let the smoke out of something?
Anything that Joe puts on his bench.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Is my microphone working better now?
Oh, a lot
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Oh, good. So I have a question for you. So a 1N400X, like a 4007 versus a 1N4148. What would one want to use? So the reason why I asked this is I was reading up, and I'm going to go back and put some capacitors across my meters on some of my testers. Sorry, not capacitors, some diodes, meter protection diodes. And I read where you want to use a 1N4148 versus a 4007 because the turn-on voltage is lower and the leakage is lower.
Yeah.
I don't think the turn-on voltage is any different. They're both silicons, but the 4148 is supposed to be a switching diode, so it might be a little faster.
It's a little bit faster.
Yeah. The 4007, the 1 through the 7 series, I think they're 1 amp rated, and you use the rectifiers. Now, interestingly enough, the 4007 actually worked as a pretty good pin diode, which is it's a different kind of switching function that I've seen it used in the radio circuits for HF, and that's not what it's designed for, but
I use those all the time on like 50s radios, and I use them to bypass selenium rectifiers. So the 4007s, I use them actually as a rectifier in a radio. Then you have to add a resistor in series to get the current correct.
Yeah.
On the DC for B plus after the diode. But I use those all the time in place of selenium rectifiers. I don't like, selenium rectifiers can go bad, and so I always put a diode, and that's the one I always use is a 1N4007. So
yeah, so those are rated for 1,000 volts. Peak
yeah, they're
reverse
rated
voltage.
1,000 volts. Yep, you bet. That's
Yeah.
right.
1 amp at 1,000 volts. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you do that, Mike, how do you know what the current level is that's going through the diode?
Well, that's a good question. And, you can make a science out of it, I imagine, in that. But what I have found, it's just, and I've done that too. You kind of do the math and you check and see what the voltage drop is. Usually you'll get that if you have and normally those are in SAMs, photo facts, so then you can, and you can pretty much do the math kind of in a general sense. And then, I've gotten lucky where I've put in either like an 85 ohm resistor, or sometimes it looks like that you're going to need to put a voltage drop to get your DC voltage at a certain amount. And then you just using Ohm's law, just using the math, and then you come up with a resistor, and then just put it in. And then normally speaking, you're not going to really hurt anything, but then do a voltage check to see what your DC voltage is at that point.
You B plus.
And sometimes you get lucky and get the right resistor.
Yeah.
But I usually just tack them in just to check them first, and then see so my B plus comes out correct.
Yeah.
It's
kind of
not
like
that,
using horseshoes.
it's not that critical.
Hand grenades.
Either,
Yeah.
The voltage is plus or minus 5 volts. It's
Oh
not-
yeah. It's not critical. Yeah, no, you're right, Bruce. It's not. So
Your seleniums drop a lot of voltage. That's where the silicon drops 7/10 of a volt. So
Oh,
that's
for sure.
a big difference.
Yes, that's, you're right.
So the
You're
seleniums
right,
get
Mark.
really hot
That's-
then, huh?
That's the
Because
reason
they're
for the resistor. Yeah,
dropping all that voltage in the current. They're dissipating a lot of power.
That's why they got plates on them
Yep.
yep.
to help dissipate the power.
Yep.
Compared to a diode, and you have no plates, just a
Yeah.
little bitty body.
Yeah.
I put that on my. So I bought an ICO 667 tube tester at one of the auctions that we had at the radio club when I first started here, and I actually tried those diodes across the meter, and it actually affected the measurement of the device. And I was just wondering, I didn't know if they were too leaky, or it's a 200 microamp 1,000 ohm meter on it. So
Yeah, so how many volts across the meter to make it go full scale?
oh geez, it's
I don't know.
200 microamps, 1,000 ohms. So whatever that is,
Yeah,
20 microamp, 20 milliamps, 20 millivolts. Is that right?
well, at 20 millivolts, the diode shouldn't be doing anything either way.
1,000.
Some of those meters are pretty sensitive though, but I don't know.
I guess it's 2 volts. Excuse me. Yeah, 2,000
Okay.
microamps, and or 200 microamps. 100 ohms would be 2/10 of a volt. 200 millivolts.
Put a couple diodes in series.
Oh yeah. Do you think that would work? But the problem is you're trying to save the meter from a. So it's 2/10 of a volt, right? So you want to go and keep it so you don't like a single diode would be like 6/10 of a volt so before it turns on.
So are you going to be using the meter to measure like high voltage, like AC and stuff? And then so
No,
you
this is for my tube tester. I'm just trying to figure out how to save my tester. Like God help you if you ever, have a shorted tube or something like that, and you're an idiot and you forgot to go and test for shorts to begin with. And
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I just was trying to figure out what kind of circuit protection you were looking for, but yeah.
Because I do dumb
Yeah,
things
good one. I had
religiously.
I was hooked up one time through my Variac, and then through the isolation transformer. Okay, and together, and then I had a problem with the radio or something one time. I forget what it was, and so I wanted to do a voltage check. Well, dumb me, instead of disconnecting the Variac, taking it out of the circuit, it was still hooked up. And so then I took my flipped it over, took my meter, and I was going off a B plus, and it shorted. And what it did is it took out the Variac.
Oh no.
It just opened it right up. And that was because when I bought it, it had no circuit protection in it. Well, long story short, I was very, very lucky on that, because where it broke in the coil was right on the end, right where the connection was, so I was able to get the wire and fish the wire out where it broke, and when it shorted, and solder that back together, and Variac worked great again. So immediately I put a on the where the incoming voltage is on it. The outgoing voltage on it. I went and put a 1.5 amp fuse, or 2 amp fuse in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way, anytime that, it would get shorted, it'd blow the fuse rather than ruin the Variac. So
when you use
I don't know why they didn't have it fuse protected in the first place.
Yeah.
So you use a Variac, right? And let's say you want to use 2 of them. So you're working on 2 pieces of equipment, right?
Okay.
And you want to do an isolation on 2 of them. So you have your isolation transformer connected into your wall. Then can you connect the Variacs to these same isolation transformer down, or is that dangerous?
That's a good question.
No, they're isolation
I
transformers.
think you can. I don't know why not. If
There's
you,
one reason why not.
what's that?
Is if you've got one radio plugged in one way and one radio plugged in the other way, and they're not isolated chassis, you'll still have plenty of volts between those two chassis.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if I've never tried that one, Dave, so I'm not sure about it, but I don't do mine that way at all. I've got the variac coming out of the wall, and then I plug the isolation transformer into the variac.
Well, you do.
Yeah, and then I plug my radio into the isolation transformer. I don't think it makes any difference which way you do it, but that just happens to be the way mine's wired up. Because then once the radio's up and playing and I don't have an issue with it and I don't need the variac anymore, then I unplug the isolation transformer out of the variac and plug it into the wall. So then that way I don't have an issue with that, I mean, it's just easier the way I've got it hooked up on my bench, that's all. But I've never hooked two things up to it at the same
Single.
time.
You'll be isolated from Bonneville, but
Yeah.
you're not isolated from each other when you're plugged into the same.
Correct.
No, you're not.
output.
Yeah. And that's like an isolation transformer is not going to keep you from getting shocked. It's just going to keep you from getting shocked and going through your body to earth,
Well,
So
It
that's the
keeps you
whole
from getting
purpose of
shocked,
that.
doesn't it?
Huh?
It keeps you from getting shocked, doesn't it? Isolation transformer?
No, you still have 120 volts coming out of the secondary of the transformer. So if you, you can still get shocked, in your radio, but it's not going to shock you from, say, your hand, and then say you're grounded on your feet on a cement
see.
floor in a garage. It's not going to return path back to earth.
right.
You can only return path back to the secondary of that transformer. But yeah, you can still get shocked, but usually it's in your hand, or something like that.
Right. Doesn't go through the heart.
Yeah,
Go from your, yeah.
yeah, it's not gonna go through your whole
Well,
body.
the way to prevent that is keep one hand in your pocket.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
they always taught us.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Keep one hand in your pocket.
Yeah,
The other thing the isolation transformer buys you is if you're hooking an oscilloscope up to the chassis or a signal generator to the chassis,
Mhm.
and that oscilloscope or signal generator is grounded, now you got sparks,
right,
Yeah, serious sparks.
right,
serious sparks. I
yeah.
watched a guy hook an oscilloscope probe up to a
Oh, no.
chassis.
Go hot
Just-
chassis.
Just smoked it all the way back to the scope. I mean, just
Oh, wow.
the wire got about an inch in diameter, it was.
Holy cow.
So can you say it again, Bruce? I
Jeez.
want to make sure I don't do this. What's the situation described here?
By plugging a hot chassis straight into the
AC/DC radio.
AC,
Uh-huh.
and you've got an oscilloscope or a signal generator that's also plugged in but has grounding.
To,
Okay,
the, to
Right.
its outer shell.
and you take that oscilloscope probe and hook it to the chassis
Yeah,
that's hot,
Right.
and the oscilloscope's ground. You got 120 volts across the shield of the oscilloscope probe, which immediately it just blows up like a balloon all the way down there.
wow, yeah, it would.
Oh yeah.
So you're supposed to run your test equipment like oscilloscopes and stuff like that on an isolation transformer then?
No,
No.
No,
you run what you're testing on the isolation transformer.
Okay.
That
I
way,
had
the
one the other,
chassis has no way to get current back to ground.
Mhm.
right. I had one the other day that blew my mind. It was, I was working on a transformer set. It was in a console, in fact, and I got done with it. I was going to do the alignment on it, and I had virtually the same sort of thing happen in that I hooked up the probe on the signal generator to the radio, and then I took the ground lead on the the signal generator, and I went to put it on the chassis, and I got a great big spark. And I stopped at that point. I thought, what in the hell is going on? And I took my voltmeter and checked it out, and I had a transformer radio with a hot chassis.
Whoa.
Yes, 120 volts. And you know what it was? It was a shorted line safety capacitor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
It shorted right out, dead short, right to from line voltage right to the chassis. And at first I couldn't figure out what it was, you know, because on one side of the line it was shorted, and on the other side it wasn't. So that made the clue right there. That clued me in as to what was going on. And they were kind of big mica caps, is what they were. And
I'll
one
be
of them
darned.
was just, yeah, I'll be darned, because usually on a line safety cap, they're supposed to, if you have a problem, they're supposed to go open, you know.
Yeah.
And this one was, well, it was from the 30s, you know.
Yeah.
It did
Yeah,
not-
they weren't, they,
And it was a mica cap, you know, so which like normally you don't replace. And
Yeah.
oh boy.
So there's X and Y safety caps, right?
Right.
And I can't remember why you do an X and why you do a Y.
Let's see, I think the X is what they call it. What's with an X means across. That means across the line. And then the Y is from the each side of the line to ground.
Okay.
So you have two safety caps, one on each side of the line. Okay. And then the X capacitor is from one side of the line to the other.
Okay.
You typically don't see that
No, you don't.
until you get into
Much.
modern stuff.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Modern stuff. Okay. No wonder.
Yeah, switching power supplies and things like that.
Oh, okay.
Is that to keep it RF?
Yeah, the EMI filters, yeah.
EMI filter.
But then most of your older radios, they've got one side of the line capacitively coupled to the chassis to basically act as an RF ground
Mm-hmm.
from line to
switch.
the chassis.
It's to help keep the switch from arcing too, right?
What was that?
It's to help keep the switch from arcing too when you turn on off.
No. No, not in that case. You'd want the cap across the switch. And they're not. You're thinking of an ignition system. Points.
Yeah, and
So
they
Pat-
make those special capacitors. I don't know, you know, I've used some of them, and I just haven't really been convinced that that they're necessary. They might be, and then maybe in some cases, I'm not sure, but they make those special line safety capacitors that are X and XY, you know, those.
Yeah.
And I've bought some and I have used them, but then I've used regular 630 volt capacitors in that application too, and have never had a problem either. So I don't know.
Well, that's what was standard to start with.
Well,
So
it was. See, that's my thinking, you know, that you know, why, you know, don't reinvent the wheel, just put in there what was originally put in, but now you're putting in modern capacitors, and so you shouldn't have an issue or a problem.
so some of the tech scopes had a problem with those capacitors made by Rifa.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they're supposed to be self-healing and all this crap. And
Oh, wow.
anyway, some of them would start arcing and smoking and heat themselves up. There's a few products that contain those that you can pretty much bet that cap's bad, but hey, it still works. It just puts out a little EMI on the line.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Boy.
Was that the 545 or which
No,
model?
no. This is high efficiency switching power supplies.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, so you're into the 2000 kind of scopes.
I had one line safety cap. It was on a Kenwood, my Kenwood stereo receiver, all tube. It's got the receiver and amplifier for phono with a preamp and the whole thing, right? And so I bought this thing from a guy, and I don't know, it was like eBay or something. Anyway, so he shipped it to me, and I took it out, and James Harper told me, he says, the Kenwoods are really good units, but the Japanese capacitors are crap. He says, just recap it and you should be in good shape. And he was right, actually. So, but I took it out to the shop and I took the cover off the bottom. I looked inside there, and the first thing I saw was one of those Japanese capacitors, and it was unwound like this, all the way from one side of the chassis to the other, in just a big spiral. And it was and that just blew me away, because I thought, oh no, you know, what else happened to it? What did it hurt? Well, all it was luckily it was a line safety capacitor, and it blew open, obviously. And so it didn't hurt anything in the stereo, I mean, at all, you know, but it was wild. It was, what a sight to see that thing, that big capacitor is all unwound and just spiraled all the way across, about a foot across that chassis. Jeez.
I was working at Tech in a lab, and anyway, they updated the lab and rewired it and all that. I went in there to make an experiment with this, use this power supply. Well, it was open frame, and but it was all good old reliable usually, you know. And anyway, I'm starting to do the experiment, and God, I don't remember that thing humming like that, you know. And it was about 3 or 4 minutes, and all of a sudden this electrolytic goes up through the ceiling, spreading goo and crap all over.
No kidding.
This is back before they had, you know, special seals where if it got pressure, it would relief, you know.
Yeah.
Old style caps. And anyway, okay, well, I got to get this experiment done. I grab another power supply. And anyway, it was enclosed, and I don't know, it ran maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and boom, you know, smoke rolls out of this thing. Well, it was another electrolytic. What the hell? Hey, John, my buddy there. Hey, John, what the hell's going on here? Oh, he's got old reliable. He brought that in. And it's another open frame, and 3 or 4 minutes, and out the side, this one went unreeling itself. Well, they had rewired it with 208.
Oh, no kidding.
110 on both leads, okay?
Oh my God.
My gosh.
And these are licensed electricians, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, 3 power supplies down and an experiment not finished.
How could you do that?
Before we finally decided, maybe we ought to check well, there's no neutral. It's 110 here, it's 110 there. Oh, it's 208 across it.
Right, right.
2 of the phases of the three-phase.
Oh, wow. My goodness sakes.
Hey, Blake,
That was,
is that a 12A58 chassis you got there?
Yep, sure is.
Blake went black.
Yeah. Wow.
You got caught.
Yeah, I was thinking I was not an Atwater Kent 55.
No. Yeah, it's a 12A 58. Got those speakers on it.
nice. I was talking to somebody too about not just having the wrong voltage, but we were talking about AC/DC radios, and then we got into polarity and all that stuff, and then having a polarized plug. And I was talking to somebody, they said that their house was all wired wrong on the modern somebody put modern outlets in it. And I don't know, was that you, Bruce, or somebody that had an older house, and someone came along and they put modern outlets in it, but they wired the positive and the neutral backwards on the outlets.
Really?
So then now your hot side is on the large spade, you know, and then the neutral is on the small one, just opposite what it should be. And so that would throw a monkey wrench into things, you know, if you had a hot chassis AC/DC, you know, and you wanted to keep the chassis on the neutral side. So anyway,
So they got their black and white wires mixed up.
Yeah, they got their black and white wires mixed up. You got that right.
They were colorblind.
Yeah, or they
Yeah.
were old school and they didn't care. Something.
No, ours seemed to be okay.
Oh, okay. It was,
but-
I can't
but a
remember
lot
who
of
that was.
But a lot of circuits I've added
Are you-
GFIs in there.
Gary
So
says he's gonna be up here on Saturday.
you don't have to follow add a ground. So
Yeah.
everything beyond the GFI is protected,
Oh, yeah.
even though it doesn't have a ground out there.
Did he send a check with you?
I have a question. So there's going to be the picnic on July,
Yeah.
and then did Pat say there's going to be an auction there too?
I don't know. We don't, I talked to Pat about that stuff, and normally speaking, we don't want to have auctions at any of our swap meets because that tends to make people grumpy because they feel like the auction is competing with their sales on their tables. So it's been kind of a rule. Once that happened one time in Aurora, and people were a little bit up in arms because everybody was buying everything from the auction, obviously, where they could get it cheaper than buying radios from people's tables, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So we decided that we weren't going to do that anymore. So I haven't heard, but I don't think Pat's planning on having an auction at the picnic.
Well, I didn't want to do that anyways, I mean,
Yeah, nobody does. But I put out an article today to go in the call letter, and then I also put one on the Google groups on email about the two events going on in Chehalis. And the one is a car show on August 7th, and everybody's invited to. It's free admission and all that. And we're going to take and have a table up there representing our club with signups and flyers and all that stuff, and some radios to display. Then August 21st is a big radio show up there in the same place, the same guy's property. Fletcher Anderson is his name. He owns 150 acres up in Chehalis, Washington.
nice.
And he's invited everybody to come up for an antique radio show and sale. And it's a combined Northwest Vintage Radio and PSARA event. And so they're coming south, we're going north, and we're going to meet in Chehalis, and everybody have a big swap meet up there.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be fun, and it's kind of like Seattle. You bring your own table, your own chairs, all that stuff, up there. He's going to have, he's got Schultz type outhouses there, and everything. So the facility is all set up for this type of an event, and should be fun. But I put all the information, the address and times and all of that business in the for the July call letter. And then also I put it on, should have come through on Google groups anyway this afternoon.
How's he getting reimbursed for his infrastructure like the potties?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's a really, really nice guy, and I think he just loves doing this. And
Okay.
so he said, yeah, just free admission, everybody show up. The first event, the car show, is a potluck. So, bring, all he asks is that you bring food and drink and stuff like that. So, and then the radio show, you just show up, there's no admission, and you just set your tables up and, sell your stuff. So it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It does sound like a lot of fun.
And then he gave me some money to restore radio, which I'm in the process of doing right now. And he wants to give that away as a door prize at the car show. So
What's the radio?
it's an airline, I'm sorry. 54BR 1506B, kind of an ivory Bakelite. Yeah, it's an airline part. It's an airline model number. And anyway, it's an
Sheriff,
Ivory
you got it?
Bakelite, All-American 5 octal.
What's that?
Huh?
I don't know if that's the 6 or the 7. Well, that's
We're listening to Joe
Does it
Yeah.
say?
Millwood's
we are.
talking into the microphone.
But anyway, yeah, it's a nice little set, nice little radio.
Hey there, Blake, you want to mute?
Piss me off.
Hey, Joe,
What?
do you want to mute?
Yeah, Joe needs to mute.
We got a lot of background going on over there.
Oh, boy. They're having fun anyway.
Well, sure. That's what it's all about.
That's right.
So any more fun here to report?
Well, let me see. I haven't heard anything or any instances of smoke being let out, you know.
So I had this, my son, he refurbishes a lot of amplifiers and high-end stuff.
Oh, cool.
And when he runs into a problem, why, of course, hey, Dad.
Yeah.
So anyway, he comes in with this subwoofer amp, 250 watts. And wow, this is strange. Anyway, it comes in through an op amp with feedback with about a gain of 2. And then it goes through another op amp, which drives a load resistor and comes back through a peak detector to another op amp and a DC restorer. And then it comes back to an LED and a CAD cell, variable resistor, which is across the feedback on the op amp. So when you drive this too hard, rather than driving it into clipping, it comes back and reduces the gain of the amplifier so it won't clip.
Automatic gain.
Oh,
control.
automatic, automatic gain control kind of thing.
Okay, but the output that went that way doesn't go anywhere.
Oh,
And so now the op amp that's driving that, it goes up to a transistor emitter and the base goes to plus 15 and the collector goes up to plus 45 or something like that. So this is supplying the 15 volts for one side of the op amp and then a similar to the other side. So the plus supply of the op amp connected to that transistor that's fixing the 15 volts, the collector then goes up to a resistor to another transistor, then actually goes further circuitry and drives the output of this amplifier.
wow.
So the power supply or the op amp power supply pins, because it's trying to drive a current here, is trying to go, which then changes these transistors on the top and bottom that are supplying that voltage that come back around and get into the amplifier itself for its output.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Anyway,
That's a lot of stuff.
a lot
Yeah.
of, well, that's not all of it. Anyway, so this thing also has an overdrive. In other words, it uses 40 volts typically, but if you're going to drive it beyond that, it has a 65 volt power supply. So before the amplifier has to get past the 40 volts, it switches the power supply that the amplifier is seeing to 65 volts. So it has the headroom to drive this thing. And that's another complicated circuit.
Yeah.
Anyway, up in the top, it had 2 transistors that are trying to drive some other transistors in the output, and they're in parallel. But they've got 2 separate resistors up to the power supply. And what would happen is this thing would lock up and it would drive down to the minus negative supply for the output. And then the protection circuit wouldn't allow the output to go because you don't want to put 65 volts DC on your speakers. Okay,
Oh, boy. Boy, oh, boy.
it's going on and on. So sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't, but you know, you got to get it to not work so that you can find out what the hell's going on.
Oh, yeah, boy, I've been there.
Anyway, it's got those 2 transistors, little plastic jobs here and down here. And the circuit board's all brown around them, you know?
Oh, boy.
Anyway, finally it failed again. And these top 2 transistors had those resistors to the power supply, and one of them didn't have a drop across it. Aha, that transistor's opening.
Yeah, yeah.
Finally found it, but I'd had it with
Oh
the
my
whole can.
gosh.
I tried everything to make this thing fail. Froze the hell out of that whole circuit board at one time, and it still wouldn't fail.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
freezing it should make it work, but you know,
Or
we
neither way.
used to use heat
Either
guns
way.
on them.
Heat gun or
Heat
freeze
gun on 'em.
spray, yeah.
No,
This thing didn't need a heat gun when it was running because those transistors were really twisty. You couldn't hold on to them.
I'll bet.
Anyway, so they're 150 volt, or were they 250 volt, 50 milliamps. I don't know why they are using those particular transistors anyway. So they're obsolete. So
Yeah.
my son tries to order some. And so, well, there's some on eBay's for 45 bucks a piece. And then in China, he found a package of 100 for $14.95.
Nice.
yeah, boys, they're probably all rejects though from the factory.
It may be, but anyway, he's going to have a lot of extras.
In case he runs into another subwoofer circuit like that again.
Actually, he's got
Grief.
2 of them. If we would
Bruce?
have had the other one at the time, we could have probably done a stare and compare. But
Yeah.
Bruce, do you call a parallel pair of transistors Darlington pair?
no,
Are those in series?
a Darlington is in series.
Okay.
Yeah, the parallel, basically the bases and the collectors were in parallel, and the emitters had 2 separate bias resistors.
Wow.
And so by measuring across those bias resistors, I found that there was no drop on one where there was a drop on the other. And so that transistor had to be open.
Yeah, I've messed with some low gain in Darlington, and they go way up if I get too high in the low gains, as far as over the gain that I need.
Well, usually the Darlingtons have buku gain, you know, in the
Well, I
thousands.
mean, a Darlington pairing, I thought it was called Darlington pairing when you put 2 together, even if it wasn't a Darlington. I know they're called Darlington in a transistor, but I don't understand that either. Or a shunt resistor. I don't understand that. If the transistor contains a shunt resistor.
I'm not sure what you mean by a shunt. You have to have a bias resistor in there.
I mean, the transistor itself, excuse me, if I said resistor, I mean, all right, it says on my testing meter there's a shunt resistor. And so the gain on the measuring of the meter might not be accurate because there's a shunt between base and emitter, I think it is.
Oh, for basically testing specifically a Darlington?
Yeah, well, I have a small transistor tester,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's digital. And then it states if it's Darlington, it'll say Darlington, or it'll also say that it's there's a shunt resistor between base and emitter, not accurate gain.
Okay.
But that's what this meter is saying. I guess
Yeah.
I'd have to look all this stuff up to find out what it's meaning, or what a shunt resistor between base and emitter is.
It sounds like something to be able to actually show the transistor operating. And if you were testing it in a normal transistor fashion, it'd just be flat saturated.
Okay. You mean saturate, the resistor itself would be saturated?
The transistor saturated.
Okay.
Collector emitter would be 0 volts.
Oh,
And
okay.
so you can't
That's
really
probably-
tell what the gain is.
So that's probably what it's testing on the, or it identifies on the meter that it's getting 0 on the collector. And then it says there's a shunt resistor between base and emitter.
Well,
That's
the
what
shunt
the meter's-
resistor, the shunt resistor is lowering the gain so that the meter can actually read something.
Okay, yeah, it does usually come up with something,
Mhm,
but it just says it may not be accurate.
right.
So I haven't really, I usually pass over those. I haven't experimented with those. I guess I don't have much mental energy on all that I have to put into just putting the regular stuff together.
So how many people work on solid state stuff?
I do once in a while. If it's a bad power transistor, I usually just boom and it's fixed, or a bad power transformer and boom, it's fixed, or a speaker is bad and then it's fixed. But beyond that, I don't go too far into them.
We've got a nice piece of equipment for doing transistor radios.
Uh-huh.
We've got a B&K transistor radio analyst. That's a nice little unit. So they've got a dynamic in-circuit checker, and you basically just go base to base to base to base from the speaker back towards the front end. And when you get to the one that the meter says, nah, that's the section you need to work on. And then you do 3 more measurements, take one of the, just say the gate, but the base and the emitter and the collector. And based on those readings, the table tells you which component is bad in the biasing of the transistor. And it's pretty cool. It works pretty well. I've done a couple of transistor radios now. And if you've got that in SAMs, which gives you the points on the circuit board where the bases are, you can do a radio pretty quickly.
Nice. That sounds like
Yeah.
a nice unit.
That is nice.
See if I can pull it down off the shelf. It's actually a pretty neat unit. It's got a power supply built into it, as well as an RF and an audio generator, and of course a transistor checker and a VTVM all in one box.
That's cool.
So I can get it off the shelf. It's kind of neat. It's not very big either. By the way, Joe's gone, so the language will improve.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I was not expecting that.
It's okay. We're all used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to work on a lot of transistor circuits.
Yeah.
So, and then they, as a matter of fact, one of the earlier computers I worked on, it's a DEC computer, digital equipment, and instead of discrete or instead of ICs, they used discrete circuitry for and, NAND, and flip-flops.
Oh,
So I
wow.
had transistors, and I mean that was a real early thing. Those are lots of fun to work on. Extend the boards out, measure
Awesome.
everything.
Must have been a PDP 0, huh?
Actually, it was a peripheral piece of equipment. We had special equipment to adapt a 36-bit machine, and so it could talk to a 16-bit machine.
Oh,
And so they developed the circuit boards, but I suppose at the time they didn't have the type of ICs they needed, so they used transistors to make discrete circuits.
Yeah.
So when I went to college at Montana State, they had a 36-bit mainframe. And it might have been, it was the strangest computer though. So if you, and the operating system was strange. So if you either went there or like a coal mine in South Africa is the only 2 places that had them, right? So, but
the 36-bit machine, Digital Equipment Corporation made the one I worked on, and it's actually a 32-bit machine, but it had checker, a check bit for each 8 bits.
Yeah.
So there's your 36 bits.
Ah. Okay.
How about what,
It's a parity bit for each
Yeah.
each byte.
when was this computer made, Larry? You know?
60s?
Yeah, it was made in the late 70s.
Oh,
70s.
okay.
Late 70s, yeah. Well, actually the early 70s, but we had it till the 90s.
Yeah,
But they were constantly improving the computer.
yeah.
Although the peripheral device is to connect the 36-bit to a 16-bit machines, they never got upgraded. We were always repairing those puppies.
Did they have the hard drives? We were about 18 inches in diameter and about 4 feet tall. And
You know what your washing machine looks like?
yeah,
That's what they looked like, except they were black. They had
20 meg.
no, they were 80 meg on 4 meg.
Oh, big ones.
Yeah, 80 meg. Well, they had 16 platters.
Okay, mine
So-
was only 20 meg and it had 5 platters.
Oh, you had the older model.
Well, yeah, but it sat next to my desk, so it was a personal hard drive.
Oh
Ah,
my God.
yeah. Wow.
IEEE 48 bus.
I'll be
Well, I
there.
was that the HP workstation, the 4836 or something like that?
Oh no, I had a 6502 based Commodore business machine. It was 96K of memory. You could use it in 32 meg page. I'm sorry, 32K pages. You could only do 32 at a time. But that was an all IEEE 48, and I had a pair of 5 1/4 inch shoe guards on it. And then I bought this Burroughs from the college when they retired it. And yeah, that's a French dog. Yeah, they go wee 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 a lot.
Hi, Brian.
Jeez. Great.
I go wee 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 a lot too. So
That's a French bulldog, and they're neat dogs. Anyway, it was what I had in my college dorm room, but yeah, it was a cool machine back in
Nice.
about 78, 79 when I started college.
Well, I wonder if, like on the NASA space missions, and of course, this was all through the 60s. Of course, they couldn't get a computer the size of a washing machine in one of those
They didn't
spaceships.
have hard drives either.
No, they didn't. I was just going to say that they were more of just processors, I imagine, than actual computers, just to control the flight dynamics and that sort of thing.
Those were PD,
and the radar, but they
PDPs, weren't they?
Yeah, they were PDP 11s. Yeah,
I would say they
PDP.
either had to be PDP 7s or 11s, so they were 11s. Okay,
yeah. 11's
Well-
a 16-bit.
yeah.
well, it was all in core memory, wasn't it?
Yeah, core
Yeah.
memory. Well, back in the early 70s when they were doing the moon missions, they were core memory.
Yeah. So your whole operating system was in core memory.
Yeah.
You go-
So you
if you
turn,
go
you turn
on,
off core memory and it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
But when they came up with the MOS memory, the MOSFETs, then you turn it off and you'd lose everything. That's when they had to develop some way to save it.
If you go onto YouTube, you can see there's some real neat things where somebody explaining really what was going on with the lunar like 11 lander and stuff like that, and what the overloads were from and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah. You know,
It was,
you know what
the 12, you mean the 1201?
The 1201 and 1202 alarms,
And
yeah.
1202 alarm, they had both of them go off, yeah.
Well, it left a radar system on that they didn't need.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Which was
Yeah,
fogging
that's
up
right.
the-
Buzz Aldrin did that. He left the radar on.
Well, they didn't know
No, he didn't know it. It
that
was like,
that it was
he thought it was supposed to be
eating
on.
resources.
Yeah, yeah. Wasn't his fault. He just didn't know. They didn't know they were supposed to shut that. They could shut it off. But
So in 72,
and they figured it
I
out.
had a at Tech, I had a PDP 1105. And it had core memory and it had a boot, added boot ROM, so you didn't have to do all the switching stuff, and a hard drive. And anyway, I designed and built a 300 baud modem so that I could use that computer from home.
That was
Boy, I
the
bet you that
primary
was
reason I bought
lightning
mine,
speed,
is so I
wasn't it,
didn't have to
Bruce?
use- That's
Well-
the reason I bought mine, is because you could get an acoustical modem and I didn't have to do punch cards. I was going
Yeah.
to school in Colorado. I didn't want to tromp through the snow.
Yeah.
Well, you could have used punch tape.
Anyway, it was a storage tube terminal. And so, you know, you could get graphics with very little data. I mean, all you need is endpoints. So it's not like a raster scan where you got to have all the dots in between and stuff. And anyway, I learned Focal, and I think I gave up on Fortran by then. But anyway, it was,
You gave up on Fortran?
oh yeah. You had BASIC, and we weren't really into Fortran that much.
No, that's what I cut my
And it was,
teeth on.
it
I
was
hated
kind of over.
Fortran. I took Fortran 4 with punch cards.
Yeah. Oh. No, I didn't punch many cards for Fortran.
Yeah, basic over a modem was a whole lot more fun.
Yeah.
Good old Fortran 4,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Burroughs 5500.
No, it was Watt 5 and Fortran 77 later on.
Yeah, I used
Fortran
mostly
lived a
Fortran.
long and daunting life.
It's still alive. Fortran's still used.
Fortran 90 something, I think, is the latest revision.
And of course,
Fortran.
there's COBOL, which nobody uses anymore. But
And
That's-
Snowball.
that's when, was it the federal government that needed backup, or was it Oregon that needed COBOL programmers because computer resources were getting screwed up?
We had COBOL programmers at the control center for, it was Bonneville Power.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, we had them for they called it the ROD system, real-time operations, dispatch and scheduling. And they used COBOL and Fortran on that.
Did you know Deanna Sterrett?
Yes, I did. I worked
Oh.
with her.
Okay. Her husband was my boss several times.
Wow.
Yeah, I know her very well, knew her very well. She died here a couple of years ago,
Oh,
and her husband here died, well, a year ago in the middle of COVID.
oh boy.
Yeah, I wanted to see him several times, but you know, you couldn't get into the facility so he died on his own.
That's too bad.
What a drag.
Yeah, Deanna was pretty sharp, man.
Yes, she was.
Okay, Bruce, on those transistors and the shunt resistor, I see that resistor is in the meter that I'm using. And then
Okay.
they expect you to calculate it with I think they said it's a 1 meg resistor, and then that's what you said that you wouldn't see. You'd be overloaded, I guess, for the meter. So then they calculated that into the meter.
Yeah, so they're changing
I
the gain
can
at the meter.
actually see the gain if I use the calculation.
Mhm.
I've got a slide rule you can borrow.
I gave one away on the free table. It was cracked.
Oh, I got a drawer full of little ones. I think they're about 10 inches long.
Anyway, anything serious high gain, I don't have an application for it now. When I see 700 on a transistor, I'm not getting, I don't think I'm using anything like that. Those aren't my favorite anyway, for what I'm doing.
There's some advantages and disadvantages to those.
Well, I mean, it's just like anything. You've got the right tool for the job. That's what you need.
Yeah.
Somebody else thinks that I mean, if you don't have the right size Phillips screwdriver, you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's true.
Or it needs a standard and you say, hand me a screwdriver. You're like,
Yeah, but you got Phillips, you got Torx, you got, there's a multitude of different
Oh,
tips anymore.
when you
Square-
start, when you
Square
start,
drive.
Square tips, you got the square tip.
I
Star
have one that
tips.
looks like, I have one that looks like this. Did I show everybody this last week?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you showed me the other day.
that was a lucky
That is
find.
cool.
Yeah, it was. I got both of them, both sizes.
that's why it's good to switch your favorite radio once in a while. They might have a different approach. Just like Blake's working on some German stuff, it's probably different than the English and the Canadian and the American stuff, or Japanese.
Now,
That's what keeps it interesting.
the Germans, they try to hide things under stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
They do.
It's like taking the dashboard out to change a pilot light,
Is that where they're hiding all the good looking women?
No, the only thing I've ever found in German radio was Olga. She has no neck. So here's that transistor analyst. I think
Oh, yeah.
most of you have seen one of these, but yeah, it's got all sorts of good stuff in it.
I'll be darned.
So that's an in-circuit analyzer.
Yeah, it has an in-circuit analyzer port right here. And then you can do both in-circuit and out-of-circuit. It's got 4 leads for the transistor checker with a transistor socket on the top. And these ports down below are the power supply. And then you've got your function and generators up here, audio, and it's got a speaker tester. Got all sorts of things in it. But what's neat about it is the way it functions. If you're running the power supply from this, and they recommend it, and you want to do your IF, it actually looks at maximum current drain during resonance of the IF. So your IFs are not done by peaking the frequency; they're done by peaking the current draw. Yeah, so
Wow.
that's how this thing works, and it's actually pretty cool and amazingly accurate.
What year is that?
I would guess these date back to the I think the one I have here is about 1962 or 63. They made them from 61, I think, through about 68. And then the next one came along, much larger unit, much more complex, did FM as well as AM. And so you could troubleshoot your AM, FM radios.
And it's all solid state.
Yeah, it's all solid state.
Well, that's too bad. It should be tube driven, be more reliable.
The one from if you get the early one, the one built in 61, it did have tubes in it. I'm not sure if this one, I don't know if this one is actually tubes or transistor. The other one I have, which Ed Tompkins is borrowing right now, is solid state.
There.
So tube is better than solid
That's
state.
no good.
Depends on the application.
Yeah, it does.
Let's argue about that.
I know a friend of mine plays guitar and he likes tube type amplifiers.
Does he play 6-string electric or bass?
6-string electric.
Yeah, and I would argue with the guy if he played a bass guitar. I like solid state for bass guitar. It's a lot tighter. It's a lot more compressed. And that's what bass guitar needs. Bass guitar needs more compression, so it's not so loose and louder music, I would say. If you like louder music. So it's still that argument, which works. Well, the tool for the job.
So they have more feedback in a bass guitar amp?
I don't know. No, usually not. It's the gain is usually on the low frequencies. It's usually most of those, and then that's still generally speaking, it's it's capped for low frequencies.
You
High
have,
dam- high damping factor.
yeah, I was gonna say, the
Yeah.
high damping factor loads
most-
speaker and controls it
Most
more.
people want to compress a bass because it kind of gets out of control because of the potentially low frequencies. If it feeds back in the low frequencies, you're probably getting it out of the output, which is still, that's why I mean, it's all still, if you know something sounds good, it's fine if it's tube, but there's certain manufacturers that did it, and then it stills the application. You know, if the louder you get, especially with low frequencies, I think a transistor is far superior than tube. Tube, you can rattle the tube and become microphonic because it's just so loud. It just, even the power tubes are going microphonic, and you're like, well, that's not usable at extreme volume. And we do that so you can hear us in the back row. In the middle of in a big farm, and then you turn it up. That's what it was intended for, generally speaking, how everything or volume evolved anyway, as the places got bigger and they needed it louder, especially from the stage, because they weren't in the very beginning when music started getting really loud and more people, they didn't have the musical instrument amplifiers microphoned or connected to the PAs. It's generally, it was just the singer, and then you had to have a loud, you know, amplifier or amplified coming from the stage. And that's the real reason. And then once I got older, I just play it loud. It's like a funny car. You just turn it up. Don't put mufflers on it. Crank it up.
So I understand Fry's is dead.
I heard that, or
That's
saw
right.
that many
I
times.
heard that.
That's really sad.
I heard that years ago, though, or a year ago.
Well, it was basically dead years ago, but
Well, I heard it long before when someone said it was. I heard that it was gone.
no, just
Anyone-
recently.
I mean,
They
I
were
used to go,
They're phasing out from what I understood.
did you guys used to go to Norvac?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was the other one down on 7th.
Radar,
back in town. The only one now is URS in Portland.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I mean, they have some stuff, but they're mainly doing, I think, security-ish, you know, kind of thing. Cameras and security is popular. And they do have a few parts. And then there was another Cascade Electric, and then I was out on Halsey.
Cascade
And
Surplus.
that's closed too for electronics. They went more into the cameras, you know, surveillance, but then they're out of business too. That was off of Halsey. About in 90th and Halsey, there was some, I forget what that company was.
H&H?
There's Double O Electronics. Is that the one you were talking about?
Yeah,
Albert?
that's the one that was out of
Yeah, it
Halsey.
was. Yeah, it was Double O. I used
Yeah.
to go in there, and then I used to kind of glean. When I first went in there, I got real good prices on stuff they stuck on this little aisle that no one else, you know, was their old stuff, old stock. And I was feeling good about that. They kind of ignored the price increases on the back, the shelves until maybe I came in and they saw that on their invoices that somebody was buying them. After
Remember when Norvac folded over there and they invited people to come over, and it was like $5 a bag. Anything you could stuff in the bag. And I walked in and told the guy, I said, I don't need a bag. Give me a rack. And I
Give me
just
a
loaded
truck.
everything up.
Oh,
truck
wow.
and trailer. Yeah, truck and trailer.
So
Yeah,
there's,
well, I filled my Forerunner with me. Sonny came out with 3 bags, and I came out with probably the equivalent of 50 bags. I think I spent $300, but you know, a bag of 3 microfarad, 4 micro, or you know, I probably bought 10,000 capacitors. You know, they were in 100 quantity bags. I just loaded up on them.
Yeah.
I'm still using out of those today, and they were all Nichicon.
Well, hopefully you use 10,000 caps yet, Blake.
Well, I sell a lot of them too. But I buy my 600 volt capacitors. I buy them in 2,500 quantity just to get the price.
Yeah.
So then there was Incredible Universe. Man, I remember when that opened, you'd come in the front door, boom, 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 boom. Talk about bass. And back in the corner, there's this Chevy minivan, boom, 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 boom. It wasn't but about 2 weeks you went in there and it was buzz, 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 as all the spot welds are breaking apart in that van. It was awful. And it wasn't soon before it was silenced altogether.
Oh, wow. Goodness sakes.
Feedback and microphonics is a real reality in playing music and building, things to produce music. It's oscillation, feedback. It's really there.
It's an art.
And then, well, they say there's a lot of things that everything can resonate off, and all of a sudden you think you got something built, but it enters into the sound. And I mean, there's a lot to it actually, if you're trying to reproduce audio musically, because you still have to go back to how acoustics work. Also, that's included too, because the room and everything around it and what you attach something to. And I mean, so it's quite complicated. So I've learned a lot over the years once I got past the involvement of playing the music, which is really important to me now also, but I'm involved in how I'm getting the sounds that I heard on, records. I guess somebody got it recorded or figured out how to get it recorded or just recorded and it worked. And then trying to find how they did that is, I guess it's the interest is trying to find it.
Christian, what's the attraction with guitar amplifiers? And trust me, I don't know anything about this, but I do know one thing is that a lot of the leaking Black Beauty capacitors that we normally would throw away are being bought up by a lot of these audiophiles on eBay and stuff. What's the attraction to those capacitors, and how are they being used to produce, and what kind of sound?
Well, generally speaking, it's the lack of knowledge with most people.
Okay.
And there is a collectible aspect, meaning that, say you've heard of Gibson guitars and Fender guitars. So to replace those components, and it doesn't matter if it's just the capacitor, it's all the different components if you can find them.
Right.
To put them back on the old gear that's worth a lot of money now. So it's like you're saying, and then the other people say, oh, if I own that piece of that capacitor and I put it in my guitar, that's their dream. And it's like, well, you got to learn to play the guitar, or play the amplifier. I don't care if the amp sounds great or not.
Oh, I see. So it's all going back to OEM as far as that's concerned.
Some of it.
Is it? Yeah.
Some of it, but the other guy, it's in every aspect that if you own that gear, then your rock idol or your music idol or whatever owns it, then you have a piece of that attachment. But it also is that you don't even have to learn to play guitar. You just put that Black Beauty in there, and all of a sudden it solves all your problems. And it's like, that's what they're buying. They're willing to pay for. Like, I mean, that's in every aspect you get into. There's arguments online with this is the best thing that's it's, and then I would actually argue the fact that Sprague made, just like RCA, it's a good company. So it fits, and these companies, they, of course they said, well, we'll order a whole bunch of Sprague and we'll put them in their guitars. Well, after they change them and they go to a mass production, cheaper product, you're like, well, those Spragues were way better. So it starts creating a
Yeah.
knowledge that you say, well, that's just a better era or a better company. And if it works really good, I mean, I have spregs that just, I mean, I think I got them from 65 and poles,
Mhm.
but they test on my meter, 0.022 is a 0.022. And it's like, well, whoa. And then a lot of the Black Beauties aren't that consistent. So, but
Right.
it's still a Black Beauty. And if you don't have a meter, you're not really involved, you're going to pay whatever that price is for the fantasy. Everybody else is agreeing that's the one to own. And
Yeah.
so they just buy them.
Yeah,
And it's like, I moved past that years ago. And
good.
I'm a lot happier, but it's a lot more stressful to get there. That's why they don't do it. I mean, anybody
Huh.
like I mean, you're going to dive into a radio you've never seen before and never worked on. There's a lot of thinking like, well, is it worth it? Or if you start it, how much stress are you going to go through before you train yourself, how to work on this thing? And then you're saying, well, I've already spent 6 months on this thing, so I might as well build a couple more to get my time back or get some money out of it. I know how to do it now.
Mhm.
And that's the same thing with learning for me is it's a lot of, glazed over eyes, staring at something and trying to figure out why you're looking at it. And then all of a sudden you're doing all that extra work. You invested a lot and you don't want to stop and now it's boring, once you're like, well, move on to the next, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, but the attraction is they were put in, say a Gibson Les Paul guitar. It's was it 58, 59, and 60.
Yeah.
They're up to $500,000.
Sure.
But in the early 70s, you probably could have bought one for $700. But you could have bought a car.
That's like everything else.
$200 less.
Yeah.
And once they go high, and the market's just set. That's what it costs. They only made reportedly, they don't know. On book, it's about 1,500 of those guitars for 3 years. And then a lot of rock stars or people that are famous played those guitars. Some of them were really good. Some are just garbage. I mean, that's the way it goes. But if you're a famous guy, you know something, you're like, I'm not paying a crappy sounding, 59, 58, 60 Les Paul. And then everybody goes, oh, I'm going to buy a Les Paul. Well, there's only 1,500 of them for how many billions of people? And there's like, well, you're going to pay.
Yeah.
And they gradually went to that place where if you owned one, Eric Clapton owned one, but he didn't play garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these guys that sounded good, they didn't play poorly sounding instruments. They played a brand name. And these people think if they buy the brand and the type that they own it. And it's kind of bragging rights.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it sounds good. And that's where I guess, of the personality, if I don't care if somebody says you don't have a Les Paul or not, it's like, I got one that sounds better than most of them.
Well, I think that what you're describing, that kind of goes back to, I was talking to Jerry Hertel about some of the audio files is that they, I guess, not knowing a lot, except that they know what these amplifiers and a lot of this high-end stuff has built into it. And there's certain things that they, don't want. They don't want anybody taking modern capacitors and filter capacitors and that sort of thing, and these amplifiers and receivers and whatnot that they want, putting them underneath the chassis. And that's like what we do that's what I do all the time on all these antique radios. And then I just leave the old can up on top for looks, for show. And that's like a big no-no. Oh no, you got to have the OEM style capacitor, and you got to find a new old stock one and put that on there, or else you're ruining the what is it? The I guess, the originality of the piece, you know,
And
and all
that-
that weird
we're
jazz
also-
goes into it, you know, and most people don't even know anything about that. All they care is about is does it sound good, you know? So
Well,
what
that's when you
what
mature.
difference does it make? But
If you
some people are
mature-
just crazy that way, you know?
They are,
But-
well, that's what you have to realize, because you're saying, well, Eric Clapton, he can sell signature guitars that are made today. His signature made after his replication of his old whatever guitars. And it's like, well, it's just a 60s guitar. Well, Eric Clapton played it. And then now they're reissuing that guitar with
Uh-huh.
the scratches and the dings and all that. And people
Oh,
are
wow.
paying thousands of dollars because it's a replica of the one that he used to play.
Yeah.
So it's a collectible and it's a pride thing. And you're always dealing with pride. You know, it's always the other guy. And I usually always turn up the amp and I said, "What did you say?" I can't hear you.
So you leave a bad cap in there so it doesn't work as well as it should.
Like I said, if it's a bad cap and you're realistically a person that moved into the technical operating, but there's still an argument. I would still argue with other people, which I don't anymore. I just move away and play my stuff. And I built my stuff. I've learned a lot. And then, like I said, if you're not involved in it and you're not concerned with it, then it doesn't matter. I mean, music, the way I play music, I can play it any way I want. I don't care who anybody is or whatever. I can play my own music. It's mine.
Right.
And they don't want you to do that. They don't want you to do that.
But
And it's like,
Christian,
well-
imagine they probably wouldn't want to do that with a Pete Townsend replica guitar because it would be like broken in pieces.
But you see, there's just this endless, you know, and if it's a piece of wood, if you can prove that it flew off that guitar in the video, and the guy on one of the guys in the crowd caught it, and he's got the video, and he can match it up that it came. Well, that's collectability. You know, you just have to switch into why is a glass of water worth anything?
Right.
You know, it's worth, for whatever reason, a glass of water is worth something or nothing because you're in the middle of the lake. It's like, well, I don't care. I'm not buying no water.
Okay.
The last Gibson I worked on, you know, the 6V6s, the plates were red hot and just cooking away. And of course, it was the coupling caps. These happened to be Bumblebee caps, pretty much like Black Beauties.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you know, replaced those, ran fine.
Well, the grid resistors get blown all the time when these guys, because see, they go around getting a tube and sticking in especially the power section. And it's a fixed bias, and they just jam one in there, and all of a sudden it smokes or it doesn't. and then you're like they got grid resistors in them to help protect, and they smoke the grid resistors, replacing those all the time. And those are kind of an add-on, or what they call a swamp resistor, which coming in from the B plus voltage into the tubes. Those are kind of add-ons through the years because I think they were to combat, they were saying that the tubes just couldn't handle. Some of the amps they kept adding more voltage, trying to get more wattage and through the years, certain companies. And then once the tubes, certain companies' tubes couldn't handle the voltage, you know, then I guess they're trying to safeguard also. There's some safeguards in there, and they're built in today because some of the tubes, the Mollard is a big tube, and Marshall is a big amplifier company from England, and they were trying to pump up the voltages, you know, for the volume or getting, you know, the power section hot and more output. And some of the power tubes some of them definitely were not being able to handle those higher voltages. And I imagine it had, you know, and that's kind of the years of what are we going to do? Let's go to transistor. And today you can't really kill the vacuum tube, even if people don't even understand what it does and why they should have it. They just want vacuum tubes because they sold it as a product. And it's a, well, tube's better, right? And then I would just tell you, not necessarily. I mean, not necessarily. It's just the right tool for the job. And then there's
Oh,
way more
nice.
stuff,
Nice.
tube, and way more stuff past an amp,
Wow.
way more stuff past a microphone, which is the guitar's pickup. I mean, there's a lot of complication, and you can't just single it down to one thing. Can ruin the whole thing, but it's generally not one thing that adds up to the whole. So, you know, how many people want to think about that? So some people do to a point, and those are usually the guys that get the things recorded. Most of the rock stars are all stoned out of their mind. They don't know nothing, and they're making money. So it's all part of the what fits together.
So what you got there, Blake?
Yeah, Blake,
Oh, real
what is
pretty.
that?
Real pretty Midwest.
Oh, it's a Midwest. No wonder. Yeah. Those things are beautiful.
Yeah, I'll show you a picture of it here.
Yeah. Is that out of a console? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've seen those. Those are beautiful.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Boom,
Wow.
boom. Anyway, I get to work on this end of it.
Right.
But I can look at it. I can look at it and see that I've been in this one. That looks like my fiberglass tubing. So
where's your Black Beauties there?
Yeah.
I sold them all on eBay for hundreds of dollars.
But you guys are concentrating on the Black Beauty, but the actual, they call it the, what are they calling that one? It's bumblebees.
Bumblebees, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Bruce mentioned those.
Yeah, those are earlier. So you know, and then I call them tan beauties. A few other people do, and that's a later class, past the Black Beauties. And the tan beauties, I mean, they're measuring in, you know, that's 1965, which I've pulled those from. They're really accurate. It's rare that I find one that's really drifted on the tan, you know, beauty.
The Bumblebee and Black Beauties get pulled out of our scope before we even start turning it on.
No, those
and
Black
we replace every damn one of them. We don't even bother testing them anymore.
Yeah,
you know?
No, I would agree. There's a lot of them that have drifted so far. Same thing with the so-called well, the earlier ones anyway. They look, a lot of people accuse me of trying to sell a resistor, and it's like, no, that's a capacitor. That's the bumblebee.
Yeah, those are bumblebees.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you a funny story. Went out to, in fact, it was, I think, the year that Mike McCrow went out with me to Texas to the VRPS annual convention. And I went down Sunday morning, which is the very end of the meet, and it's a swap meet. And somebody had bought a box of stuff, and they had decided they didn't want the capacitors. They took them out of the box and laid them all out on the table, and they were brand new Sprague Black Beauties, still in their little plastic jewel cases. And I scarfed them all up. I asked, "Hey, you don't want these?" And he goes, "No, those things are always leaky. They're just crap." I thought, gosh, you know, there's like 10 boxes or 10 little jewel cases full of caps. And I know I'd heard rumors, so I brought them home, took pictures of all of them, took, you know, a few pictures on the Sencor analyzer showing that yes, indeed, they were what they were rated at, and yes, indeed, they were leaky. And then I put them up on eBay, and I think about 36 bids later, I sold those things for, I don't know, $150 or $160. And I just shook my head. Said, okay. Brian Snotter was right. He said people will pay big bucks for these things. But they were nice. They had these great big long leads. I mean, those capacitors were about 8 inches long with the leads on them.
Wow.
Now I'm looking all over for them.
Yep, you have to consider the collectability and why there's a mystique with the people that don't know that they should be in a tolerance, and if they're not in tolerance, how am I going to use them?
Yeah,
I got a couple jars of pulls there at the museum. I guess
I'll
we
put them on eBay. They'll go for big bucks.
wow.
Well, when I sell them, I try and tell people what they test at. And then I tell them to use them for low voltage in the tone controls of the guitar. And they do. They are. I have the Bumblebee Sprigs in my guitar, and they really are a very smooth transition when I use them with the tone control, which is extremely low voltage to ground. And it bleeds off the treble to ground. It's a really good capacitor. I like it. I mean, it's great for rolling off the high end on the guitar, which is millivolts.
They've turned into variable capacitors because of their leakage. If you test it at one frequency, the 0.01 is 0.01, but at lower frequency, it's like 0.022. So they're basically they're kind of acting like a small electrolytic capacitor. So at low frequency, the capacitance is bigger. Well, electrolytic is basically the moisture in there acting as the leakage and also increasing the capacitance at low frequency.
But in that application, I would fight against that. They really sound good for the control of the roll off of the high frequency on the guitar, which is millivolts.
I got fun, I'll say you.
And that's where I put it. I wouldn't argue, well, that thing's going to go crazy. You put in something in voltage. It does work, and I'm really happy with it. And I can resell those things for way more than you're like, wow, I found gold nuggets. So
every
you're like,
time,
oh, why not?
if I'm working on a 1946 Philco and I turn it over and it's got one of those bumblebees or black beauties, the first thing I do is I desolder it, take it out and throw it away and put in a modern capacitor. I don't even think twice about it.
Just put them on the free table.
Yeah, well, for one thing, it's been in the radio for, 70 years. So
put it on the free table and I'll see if it's anywhere near spec.
and
if it's
the likelihood is going to be bad.
But I'm working with millivolts. So, and then when you put it in the guitar and you're getting the result, you're bleeding off the treble, and it's really a smooth gradual, which you got a potentiometer to deal with, you got everything else. But if it really works, then you're like, hey, there's a noticeable difference if you put something else in there. And that's what I do. I compare. You got to have to compare to, and then you're like, I'm not taking those caps out of my guitars. I mean, they're the Bumblebee type, and you say, well, they've drifted way off, and they're very, very smooth when I turn down the tone control. A lot of people don't use the tone control, so they're going to pay $100 or $80 for a Bumblebee, and I was like, but do you use your tone control? Oh no, man, that's going to make me sound like the rock star. It's like, well, no, it's not. And I'm honest with people. I just say, no, it's not. It's not. You don't use your tone control. If you wire it, bleed to ground, I don't think you're getting anything at all until you turn your tone. And that's a maturity thing when you start, learning how to play your instrument. You do the hard work. A lot of these people don't, and you don't want to listen to them unless they're really old guys and they just have a unique sound. Those are really good sounds that, you go back in the past, and we like a lot of primitive sounds, primitive players, and I don't know, I've kind of always fought the system. I don't just get the newfangled thing unless it works. I don't just buy the most popular or the most expensive. Everybody's telling me that's what Eddie Van Halen did. I'm like, I don't care. I'm playing my guitar. But I like all the parts. I have so many parts that I glean because they don't make them anymore. And I value that too, because RCA, GE, Telefunken, Amperex, there are certain periods of time there was just a standard. And most of the time, most people can decide that's a good company. They had quality control. They made good parts. And if good parts have drifted over the years, but if you find the good parts that they made, I mean, a lot of that stuff went to the military. So these guys were making good parts at, certain points in time. And our community standards were different. You go to work,
Well,
had RCI on it, better be good.
well, going
And
back
you're
to
like,
what Bruce,
cool, I'll buy that.
hey, going back to what Bruce was saying, and if you think about a guitar, you're talking about an audio range. I don't know what the low and high limit is on it. Right now I couldn't tell you, but I do know it's somewhere within the audio range. Okay, and so that's probably pretty limited compared to like a radio where you're talking about extremely higher frequencies with your RF and that IF and all of those types of things. That,
20.
so if you're limited, in other words, you're limited to a certain audio range that capacitor has to function at, and if hey, the capacitor works great there, then fine, but if you put it into another application where you're dealing with high RF frequencies and stuff like that it has to bypass, for instance, well then the capacitor may be no good at all. So that that all kind of makes sense there too. So you have to think about that.
I'm usually using, when I've built modern amplifiers, I'm using modern capacitors that still have a good reputation, that they are very close to the, something that is an older standard. So, I mean, that's the other deal. I'm not putting these old, if it's an old tube and it sounds like garbage, I'm not using it. It's just, I've done that for years. Like, that doesn't sound good. I don't care what name's on it. I just want modern capacitors too. That's all I put in my amplifiers. I put modern capacitors, and then I go for a good one that somebody's saying, hey, we're trying to make them like the old ones.
Gotta run. We'll catch you guys later.
All right, Bruce.
Take care, Bruce. Good night.
So is that like a 12 tube Midwest or something that you're working on, Blake, or what is that?
Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I only count 11 tubes, but if it has 9 on it, I guess it'd be a 12.
Oh, I was close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did
those are nice.
Midwest ever make anything that didn't have a batch?
I
tubes in
think
it?
you're right. I think that's right. That's probably why I probably guessed pretty close on it. Yeah, they're nice radio. I like Midwest radios.
I'm committing sacrilege on all 3 of these radios, 2 Zeniths and a Midwest. I'm putting auxiliary audio inputs in them with a switch for Gary. They were picked up today, and he wants them back ASAP.
Oh my gosh. It sounds like you got your work cut out for you. You're going to be out in the garage for a while to try and get these things.
Actually, I knew he was coming, or knew they were coming.
Yeah.
Was actually able to put these together. So it's a matter of popping 2 holes in it with my
that's a good deal.
Little hole maker that I've got, and then and then just mounting the 2 pieces and two wires and ready to go.
Yeah, those little switches are nice in the fact that they are small diameter on the screw necks. Like I think they're 1/4 inch, aren't they?
Yeah, they're 1/4 inch hole, and
right.
This is a double throw.
Same
thing you've got, except you've got
I've got the 3-pin.
Yeah, they're over here in the bag next to me. There's about 50 of them in here of mixed singles and doubles.
Yeah,
so the ones you've got are likely this one right here.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yep.
Yep.
And the ones I'm using are just same thing, same switch, except they're double row.
Double row, yeah.
So yeah, 4 components and a couple of wires and 2 poles.
So you just get those all wired up ahead of time, and then just go ahead and and knock them in when you get the radio. That's
You
pretty
know,
good.
I do, and the reason I do is because I have more control with my soldering iron when I do that. And
Yeah.
like I said, these are plastic bodies. Any heat at all for any length of time, and those pins just go to mush, or the
Yeah.
plastic goes to mush,
Right.
and they don't work anymore.
But the only thing you got to do is thread feed the cable through the chassis somehow when you get it, so that way you can solder it onto the switch from there.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't measure the length of wire I need until I actually get ready to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's always going to be different.
Oh yeah. But I'm on the third one now, and I didn't start him until after
cool.
Foulmouth Joe left.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what,
That's
I like
funny.
being a bartender. I listen to him just scold one guy, and the other guy scolds back, and I know all their bad habits and all their ailments, and I just smile and go, yeah.
Yeah.
That person can be a challenge. And
that's funny.
Joe says,
Hey,
you don't
Mike.
let any of this get to you. And I said, absolutely not.
Hey, Mike, at the auction, you got some radios last meeting, and you paid $1-ish or $2.
Oh, that was just a bare cabinet.
No, I thought you bought some smaller ones though. What, maybe a cracked case? It
No,
was a Bakelite.
no, that wasn't me.
Which
The only
auction,
thing
Christian? Which auction? His wife bought 16 at one, and he bought a bunch at another. You have to
my
qualify
wife.
the auction.
Now you're talking the
Just
auction
the
before the
last-
last one. You know.
No, the last meeting we had in the morning, I thought you got a
okay.
cracked Bakelite.
No, there's
radio,
only one
and I
thing
was
I
wondering-
bought, and that was for $1. I bought a empty wooden case for a Zenith 6D030 radio.
Okay.
And
And then you're using that for replacement or a part?
Yes, I just happen to have that radio, and the wood cabinet on the one I have was really bad. The veneer was cracked and peeled off on part of it, and I was gonna have to re-veneer the whole thing, and I was in the process of maybe trying to get it, but I couldn't find a good piece of veneer that size. I didn't have one, and so I was gonna have to either buy some or something to get that cabinet back together. And lo and behold, here come this one. You know, it doesn't have a chassis in it or anything, and so that was a good fit. That's the only thing I bought at the last auction.
Yeah, I thought there was some Bakelite that came up that was cracked, but
No, it might have
That
been
probably
Pat.
went probably
sounds
went to
like-
Pat or Esteban. Well,
Yeah, it
Esteban
sounds like
wasn't there, so probably Pat.
Something Pat would buy.
Pat always gets something because somebody else doesn't overbid him.
Yeah.
He bids $1 and no one else does. Well, Pat's got it.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna have to bug out, guys. So I will.
Can we watch?
Huh? Yes, that's fine. I'm gonna hit the switch right now. So anyway, I'm gonna take off. Everybody have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
You do
All
the
right.
same.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, good night.
Good night.
Well, who's left?
I am. I'm almost ready to, this is Christian. We can we
Okay.
can talk about your Black Beauty capacitors and save them all
Yeah.
and save them all.
I don't have them. I don't have them anymore. I got rid of them.
We'll throw them in that bucket. I don't see anything wrong with that. But I
Yep.
usually sell them if they're tested kind of closer to the range they're usually, but people will take the chance on them, I guess. But I
I'll
usually, when I
remember.
resell,
I'll remember you when I get some more. I
well, if they're
ta-
way
I-
off, I'll
I
agree
take
with
them-
you. I'm not
yeah,
gonna stick
I
them
take
in
them in,
high
put them on the free
voltage.
table.
I said I'm not sticking them in high voltage. I'm sticking them in millivolts,
Yeah,
and
well,
then I'm
they're probably fine
sticking-
for that.
yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. I can agree with all these. Absolutely, I can argue all day long with these other guys that tell me that excuse me, not always new old stock, but old stock tubes are way better than new ones. I'm like, but your old stock is not any good. It's done. And they're like, oh, I paid, this much money for it. And it's like, well, it's no good.
Oh, well. I need a terminal strip and I need a nut.
You just gotta compare things and say, well, my favorite things, but that one isn't any good. And I'm trying to be realistic with, and then I like the expansion that I get from the radio club. I learn a lot, and I like that. I'm learning that. I mean, I like a lot of things I don't know, and then all of a sudden, I'm learning them. That's what I like about
I've been coming to the club for over 10 years and I still learn something new every time.
And that's what I enjoy. I really like, there's, the certain people that are like even George. I really like George when George used to come. I mean, it's like that guy told you, stuff. And I was like, I didn't know that before. He was a nice guy when he would tell you. So
and he was scary smart.
And I like Dan and his dad. Yeah, and Dan and his dad, they have stuff. I'm like, I never knew anything about those things you guys collect. And then you give me some history. I was like, I've never been on that old 1920s shit, so I never knew they used those speakers. I mean, yeah. I really like the club. I mean, it's not just to come and take advantage of it. It's like,
no, it's a good
lot
resource.
Of things I learn, and that's what
it's all about. It's taking advantage of the opportunity of these people that many were like George was a design engineer.
Yeah.
I remember when I first joined the club and he found out I was an electrical engineer. He just about went nuts. And it's like, whoa, slow down. I'm an applications engineer, not a design engineer. And but he's amazing. I'll ask him a question and he'll answer it without any reference or anything. It's just like, oh yeah, typical antenna coil will have this many turns on it. And it's like, holy cow, how do you remember that stuff? That's what he did for a living for 40 years.
Yeah, there's just certain personalities that are really big in the club, that you're just like, wow. I mean, you guys have really done something for, a long time. I wouldn't have done it that long, but you did. And it's really, there's a lot of absorption that they, gained. They lived it. They didn't just skip around. They just lived it. And it's like, man, that's valuable. It's like a book, you're like, man, you guys really lived this thing, didn't you? And they lived it. So that's, I glean that, I mean, there's different personalities at the club, but everybody, in a club like that, you can find, different interests of different people, and you just learn if you're willing to learn.
You're willing to listen.
Yeah. Somebody's got something, that you haven't been able to do. And somebody's got an interest different than mine. And
you weren't around in the years of WRNO when, every Wednesday night from 6:30, 7 o'clock until, unfortunately, sometimes 2 a.m. It's hard to get rid of people. Did that for 11 years, and people were like, "God, it was so good of you to do that. And God, you taught us so much." And it's like, you got to turn tables on that, though. When there were 20 people in the garage, I had 20 instructors and one of me. So a lot of information flowed back and forth. I learned a lot in those years.
Well, I guess you'd say as I've grown up, I've tried to travel a lot of different parts of the world, and I kind of have to speak their language. When I get there, I'm not going to learn anything. They'll kick me out. Same thing with the radio group. I just have to kind of learn to, slowly speak their language until I don't overwhelm them with, my interest, which is my passion.
Yeah. A lot of good folks in this club. And like I said, every one of them is a little bit different and has a different passion. And
yeah. Well, I guess that's the art of learning when you're in a group, is you just Try not to press the other guy until you find out, he likes plastic radios and you don't. They're the worst things they ever made.
I've got a button here on my workbench that's probably 30 years old, and it says real radios are made of wood.
Yeah. And then I've already been through that for 40 years of starting the guitar and trying to learn who knows the secret of life in life, not just for guitar, because once you start talking guitar, if they don't like it or whatever they relate to it, then you're kind of just canceled out right away. So you have to finesse it. You have to say, no, you like music, right? Well, there's music on that, Lawrence Welk show, and they're playing electric guitar.
Beatles were on Lawrence Welk.
Or Hee Haw. And so you just have to slow it down. And then they're like, oh, I thought you were one of those guys. And I'm like, I might be, but I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
And then, people just have to kind of get used to, everybody has to get used to what they're afraid of. And then you're like, well, what are you afraid of? And it's like, well, I'll tell you. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I won't talk about that. I won't expose you to that. That funny car, that dragster. It's like, that's so loud. It's like, well, why would they ever do that? Well, I don't have to argue with you. We just don't go to the, drag strip because they're going to probably be loud and fast. Oh, I'd never do that. Well, that's fine. We can talk about old cars. I love old cars, driving down the road, barely making it down the road at 10 miles an hour, steam engine motors, I love those too. Yeah. So I guess it's kind of broadening.
No steam engine in my old car.
I just like things that I don't know about. A lot of times it's like, wow, man, it's time somebody spent to, and I don't even know how that works. And then you try and learn how it works. Steam engines are crazy. These little things that they have at the steam engine shows, they just sit there and go. You're like, how is that running?
My dad has some of those little toy steam engines, and those things have always enamored me.
Those are crazy though. How does it stay running?
Yeah.
And that's really interesting for your mind. You're like, I went to this little steam engine show and I was like, how does that, and then you start learning and it's like, I never knew that. How does that work? I think you just, talked on the telephone or talked on the internet. How does that work? I don't know. I don't care. It's way beyond what I want to get. I want to stay way back in the old days. And I do like horseback riding and buggies and old Westerns. So
there you go.
I like them. They're great. Old, if they're done well, those old John Waynes are just like living life. And I even have a crazy one where the horses are sped up when they're running. And looks funny.
Sounds to me like you need a 1939 or a 1940 television set to watch them on.
But see, I kind of like, how about more modern? I'm watching them on YouTube, right? Right now. It's way more self-indulgent. Just like I want it. I don't care about trying to fix and keep that thing running. I'll just watch it on YouTube.
My sister
keep
came
going
down.
Back to this. I don't know.
My sister came down a couple of years ago for Thanksgiving. We trade off there in the Seattle area. And she has at the time, she had two strapping high school boys. And the older one and dad were in the family room watching the football game they wanted to. And the younger one, he was really upset because we didn't have a second television in the house. We have one in the master bedroom, but my wife said, no, you can't go in the master bedroom. But poor kid's wanting to watch it. And I finally said, look, I said, you think you'd be okay with a like a 3-inch screen? And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, we do have one other television. I said, I got a 1947 Pilot in the living room and it works. It'll play the games for you. And he's like, he looks at me kind of funny. And we go in and I turn the television on, I put it on the table and and sitting on his chair. And he sat there for 2.5 freaking hours, watched the football team come in and goes, "Wow, Uncle Blake, that was rad." And what was rad? He goes, "Well, I was watching the college game in the other room on the old TV." And Pat's like, "What old TV?" They all had to go in and look at it. And it is. It's got like a 3-inch screen on it. I mean, this kid was looking at football players that were 1/4 of an inch tall. And he loved it. He got to see the game. He knew what the score was. Anyway, that's now a family memory. Uncle Blake has an old TV.
Well, I guess I'd say I was an adventuresome kid and I stayed it.
Yeah, he got his phone out and took a bunch of pictures of it and took them back and showed all his buddies. Check this out. I'll bet you've never done this. I just looked at it like you and said, that was painful, man. 2.5 hours on 3-inch black and white TV. Ooh.
As long as it's entertaining.
Yep.
That's the whole deal.
All right.
It's like we're willing to pay for entertainment.
Blake, were pilots $high-dollar TVs?
What's
Pardon
that?
me?
Pilots TVs?
Yeah, it's a Pilot. You can look it up on the web. It's a Pilot TV 37. It was a mass-produced, really great for a college room or for a desk television. Little tiny screen. They made a 5-inch version by putting a magnifying glass in front of it, and it's a really neat little television. What I like about it is it doesn't weigh hardly anything. It probably weighs 10 pounds, and it looks like a little piece of Samsonite luggage. They were narrower on top and were wider on the bottom. The wide end has got the television, and it's got radio type tuning, so it has channel 1 on it, which is the reason I really liked is it channel 1. But yeah, it's a cool television. It plays good. It's a series circuit.
Pilot made some $high-dollar stuff though, right? Didn't they? Real high component, really good quality.
Pilot made some nice stuff. This television was not, I wouldn't say it was the best thing they ever made, but it was novel in the fact that they were able to produce the television and sell it in 1947 for $100.
Wow.
Nobody else was doing that.
A lot of money. Whoa.
Yeah. But it's got a little 3-inch tube in it, and said it's really a cool little television, and it's all rebuilt. Plays just fine. I have to have a converter on it now.
I was looking at the Pilot radios, and they look like the quality of the stuff inside looks like they're real qualities, like the tuning condensers and all the coils. They look like they're really high quality.
They made really nice stuff. Did you get the tuner, the Pilot tuner at the last auction?
I got the 1929 one. It was a year ago, I think. This is when I got. I didn't get the tuner. No.
Okay, there was a Pilot tuner, FM tuner, and I was telling her, those are really nice. I've got 3 or 4 of those out in the shed that somebody calls up and says, there's nothing on AM anymore. Can you what can you do for me? Well, I can give you an auxiliary input. I can give you Bluetooth. I can give you an FM tuner, whatever you want. And sometimes they say, well, I really want to stay authentic. Can I buy the FM tuner? They're putting a 1947, 1948 tuner on a 1942 radio, and that's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. I saw that tuner and I bid on it, but I think Wolf outbid me on that.
Okay. Yeah, they're pretty neat. I've actually got there's a 4-section electrolytic in that's always bad. And I actually rolled a couple of them and told them that, hey, so you get stuck and you want to buy a capacitor for that. I've got the replacement for the can electrolytic in it.
Hey, Franklin.
Hey.
Tell Blake how long you had to wait for a ride.
I was 3 hours.
Whoa.
Can you believe it? Trim it for 3 hours.
And tell him that I tried to hang out with you, buddy. I went to Clackamas Park after that, then watched the ducks and the geese and watched them fishing for shad. But that was a long time to wait, man.
That was crazy. I care about you. Just there's a couple of hairy spots that I was worried about coming down that hill, maybe.
Like I said, that's ridiculous to wait. I mean, that was way out there. I felt it. I was like, come on, man.
At least you had good conversation while I was there.
No, I know, but I was saying that was a long time for you to wait. That, you know, I don't know if you could say, hey, you know, come on, man. It never should wait that long. Never, man. And you already put in for a ride, right?
Oh yeah, it was already set up a week ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. It was really long.
I was there from 6:30 to 3:30.
Jeez, it was. I was there. That was a long time. I was like, "Where's your ride, Franklin?"
I was exhausted. Yeah.
Yeah, it
'Cause I
was. It was like,
set up, you know, all the chairs too, by pushing them around with my wheelchair.
no, that's just crazy to make you wait that long for a ride. That's like really, 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 really poor service.
It's like a 20-minute ride too. I mean, it's just I don't live that far away.
Well, it's not even that far away from Portland General or Central. I mean, I get on 205. I get out there to the Grange in less than 15 minutes if there's no traffic.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah. 45 from here.
Vancouver, or what part of Vancouver are you in?
I'm in East Vancouver. The next major thoroughfare is Camas. But
you were out by Camas or up north of Camas, or
no, just west of Camas a little bit. The major thoroughfare the last one in East Vancouver is 164th, and the next one down is 192nd. 192nd splits Camas and East Vancouver. I live halfway between those on 172nd.
Off of 18.
Yeah, yep.
Or 14, I mean, not 18, but 14.
Yep. Actually 18 was closer. Northeast 18th is what I live off of, and that's the road that runs east-west that has the twin towers with the BPA lines running on them.
Oh yeah. The years ago when it was reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a real quandary for July. I want to bring a bunch of stuff and sell it, but my son wants to come out in the Roadster. So I don't know what we're gonna do. Maybe I'll talk Pat into hauling my crap out there, and Brian.
You mean on the barbecue or the picnic?
Yeah, I thought I'd bring a bunch of stuff out, but
I talked to him and Esteban because Esteban's controlling that. You know,
oh yeah.
I think Pat has a lot of. You think he does in his garage?
I've seen his garage.
So maybe Esteban and Pat might bring that out for that picnic day.
Yeah, they might. And Pat's over here about once a month, and Esteban comes over on Tuesday evening for tutoring.
The deal is to really kind of post or handbill, get some more people, because I talk to people in Oregon City on a garage sale and they don't know anything about even the Grange, you know, over there. And I'm like, I talked to a young kid that was, I don't know, he's 14, 15. And I said, well, we got a meeting like once a month and I said, they build, you know, old radios. I said, it's really good for your mind. Just to not know how something works and somebody help you get it working. It's really good for you in education. And you'll learn, you know, something. He's like, he didn't know much about it. And then of course you got to get the parents.
Oh yeah.
It's okay, or hey, you should do that. That's a good thing for your brain, you know. Like go over there to some old dudes that can teach you.
Some kids are just into antiques and electronics, and you combine the two and you got something pretty cool. You know, we've had a few youngsters, they generally get to about 17 and then they discover girls and then they're gone.
When I was in grade school, I noticed some of the girls changing. And I thought that was different than some of the guys, at least, you know, from neck up. It was like, yeah, there's something different. And I argue with more girls than guys when you want to go, you know, fishing.
Or he dropped
Did we
out.
lose him?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you what, it's 9:30 and I am done with my 4 radios that I had to put put auxiliary jacks in, and I think I'm gonna shut down for the night. I'm tired.
Oh, you bet. I'll talk to you later. Thanks, Wayne.
All right, take care. Thanks for setting us all up.
Oh, no problem. I enjoy it. Thank you so much.
All right, talk to you later.
You bet. Bye.